Alright, part 3. This is part 3 of my Undead Unluck review. I have a playlist containing the previous two parts that will appear in the right hand corner right now and in the description below. And for you anime only watchers, this is your chance to jump ship right now as I'm going to spoil arcs beyond what was shown in the anime. So if you don't want to be spoiled and experience them yourself, click out the video now and come back after season 2 finished airing. So when we last left off, it was on a pretty suspenseful note of Fang receiving orders to capture Fuko. And I'm not going to waste any more time with this intro and start talking about the next arc. It's the Shen arc. It's literally the Shen arc. It explores Shen's backstory, it develops Shen and Mew's relationship, and the duo plus Shen and Mew come into conflict with someone from Shen's past. Like with Autumn, Summer barely has a presence in this arc. When I was remembering past arcs, all I could think of is the stuff that happened to Shen. Summer was barely an afterthought. Now to clarify, I'm not saying that Tosaka forgot about the Uma Summer. It just faded in the background as the arc goes on. And by the time it came to dealing with Summer, my brain was like, oh yeah, I forgot about you. And don't even get me started with Winter, as it felt anticlimactic when it came to dealing with them. Sorry for rambling on, let me get back on track. Andy and Fuko join up with Shen and Mew, where they see a very interesting scene of Shen punishing Mew by utilizing his untruth on her, as she was using another artifact despite Mew's good intentions of wanting to fight and protect by her master's side. Which is understandable on both perspectives, although I'm surprised Mew hasn't gone brain dead considering she has 8 of them, but maybe she collects one every several months. We get info on how Summer works, and it's revealed it grows bigger by consuming gunpowder or similar substances to it. The core is still pretty small, so Top is running around looking for the core, while Shen has been guarding a tower which is a storage for fireworks, using it as bait to lure out Summer. However, Shen only cares about fighting Andy, noticing that he has grown stronger thanks to the past arc, and keeps trying to egg him on towards a fight. And he gets his wish when a sub-body of Summer comes crashing in, but is quickly defeated by Andy, who is forced to use his ability thanks to Untruth. But it's not over yet, as a hooded figure with various Summer sub-bodies and the core appear, sending them to attack the tower as the man uses an artifact to summon Jiangshi, aka Chinese zombies. And I love this moment where initially Shen went on ahead to deal with Summer, telling Andy to deal with the hooded figure, but the second that Jiangshi came out, he was like, never mind, I'll deal with them, you go deal with Summer. As he uses Nimbus, sorry, I meant Quinto-un, to send the duo up to the tower. But as Shen fights the Jiangshi and eventually the hooded figure, he realizes that the Jiangshi are disciples of the old school Shen trained in, and the hooded figure is his former mentor and source of hatred, Fang. So throughout the arc, Shen's past is slowly revealed, and it shows when he was a kid, Shen was an orphan living on the streets with his younger sister Mei, wanting to become stronger so he could protect her. He eventually joined a martial arts school run by Fang to continue this promise, with Mei going to a normal school as it was a condition Shen proposed to Fang in order for him to agree to be taught by him. But complications arrive when Mei feels frustrated she can't defend herself from some bullies, so she learns how to fight from Shen. It quickly turns out Mei was also quite strong herself, and when Fang found out, he forced the two siblings to fight one another and threw Mei off a cliff for being weaker. Shen saves her at the last second, holding onto her hand and hoping she doesn't let go. But this is a negator backstory, so you can imagine what happens during this moment when Untruth manifests in Shen. Even though Shen accidentally killed his sister, Fang was the one responsible for Mei's death, so Shen has been resenting Fang ever since, working on becoming even more stronger to kill Fang. However, in the fight against him, Shen has two problems. One, Untruth's activation condition of being fond of your target doesn't work on Fang since Shen hates him, and 2, Untruth isn't as effective against fast-thinking opponents, as the more experienced his opponent, the harder it is to gauge their thinking. Explaining why Shen got curb stomped by Victor in the spoil arc despite being fond of him and looking forward to fighting him. Because of these two problems, Fang easily overpowers Shen and Mew before taking the latter captive. Believing since Shen became stronger because of his sister's death, he wonders how much stronger Shen would get with Mew's death. Meanwhile, Andy is able to destroy one of the sub-bodies, but the core is able to grow larger. Fang then appears beside it on his own version of Pink Moon, thanking Andy for killing Rip because he was allowed to become young again, as this is what he used to look like. But how was he able to become young again? Well, remember back in part 2 when I explained how Rip was able to stay alive and turn into a child? I may have lied. It was actually a time control artifact Rip smuggled from the cruise ship, the same one Akira drew a copy of in the past arc that Fang used to exchange 150 years of his life to revert Rip back 15 years. The explanation I gave in part 2 was just a theory that I made when I first read this manga, although I wish Tosaka implemented the time control artifact more. Maybe when Lotla tells Fuko Rip won't die today, we can get a small panel of Fang holding the artifact, letting the reader know of its importance, so when it shows up again when Akira uses it and Rip explains how it works, it gives a hint on how Rip was able to be saved. Just some food for thought. Fang reveals his plan, and it's by pulling a Goku where he wants to raise Summer into its phase 2 and kill Mew to make Shen grow even stronger. So that way he can fight both Shen and Summer at their strongest and overcome them, all for the sake of fighting God and becoming the strongest of all creation. The fight starts between Andy and Fang when Andy trying to figure out Fang's abilities, since if he's a member of Under, he has to have a negator ability, right? Nope, he's just a guy. A really strong guy with at least 150 years worth of pure technique. He even offers Andy a chance to incorporate his martial arts style into his fighting, but Andy declines, saying he has no interest in being the strongest and his focus right now is protecting Fuko, who got off of Andy helping Mew. And here comes Shen, gaining his second win, and thanks to Fuko's unluck, manages to land a major hit on Fang. Shen tries to push away Andy, saying this is his personal fight and he needs to do this alone. But Andy, along with Fuko and Mew, knocks some sense into him, with Andy saying to focus on what's important to him right now, which is protecting Mew. And Andy is more than willing to help Shen with that, especially since Shen did the same for Andy back in the spoil arc, despite Shen's personal interests. So the plan is for Fuko to protect Mew while the guys tag team fighting Shen. And it works for a moment, however Fang tries to fire off his strongest attack towards the girls. But luckily the guys manage to stop it before it hits them. Andy will be fine from this. Shen, however, yeah. As Shen lays dying, he sees a vision of Mei and profusely apologizes for accidentally killing her. However, Mei makes it clear she doesn't hate him and tells him to get back up to protect Mew, as it's not his time yet. We also get the second half of Shen's backstory, where it shows how he lost the Fang for the first time, him traveling across the world fighting to get stronger, him losing to Junez and joining the Union, leading up to the moment where he met Mew for the first time. He found her and her little brother in an aftermath involving an Uma and took them under his wing because they remind him of his past. While the brother didn't make it, Shen continued to look after Mew, eventually growing to truly care for her. Mei tells Shen to wait for him to stay alive and fades away while Shen is brought back into the waking world by Mew. Using his last remaining strength, he tells Mew and the duo his plan of grabbing the artifact beads Fang has and handing them to Mew, who will deliver a final blow on Shen and turning him into a Jiangshi. Mew objects to this plan, saying it's not even clear if Shen will be able to retain his personality or being a mindless zombie, and offers other solutions. But either of those solutions won't work, so this is the next best option, and Shen tells Mew one more thing. He tells her the truth about Untruth, and how at first he thought it required him seeing a strong opponent and wanting to fight them. However, after spending time with Mew, he realizes it requires him to be fond of the person, and this is his way of basically confessing his love for Mew. The plan finally comes into fruition, and Shen comes back to life as a Jiangshi, memories intact and just in time to protect Mew and Fuko again from Fang's strongest attack. The guys try to do the flip-flop trick from before, but it doesn't work as technically Shen died, so Untruth is no longer with him for him to use on Andy to attack Fang, but someone else does. And well, Miu was talking about how this quest was a chance for her to fight, and she gets it when untruth manifests inside her. And this time it personally affects Fang, as Miu doesn't have hatred towards him, because to her, it's thanks to him that she was able to carry one of Shen's burdens and help defeat Fang. By the way, throughout this fight, Summer continued to gain power, and when Fang was defeated, it entered its second phase. And like with the last arc, it easily gets defeated with the combined efforts of the duo, Shen, Miu, Top, Jakara, and Tatiana, with an assist from Apocalypse, who had untruth used on them to reveal Summer's weak points. As Summer explodes into a million fireworks, Shen asks Miu to use untruth on Fang and asks him about his feelings about him. Fang claims that he was using them as fodder and will never see them as family, but since untruth was used on him, despite the terrible things he's committed on his former students, Mei and Shen, deep down, he truly cared for them. Well, that was unexpectedly emotional at the end, but it's time to move on to wait, why is it suddenly Winter Wonderland? I'm sure some of you have already figured it out, but to those who are confused as Fuko, allow me to explain. Remember back in part 1 I said Umas are the very rules of the world, aka the manifestation of concepts? What will happen if you killed one of them? I'm sure your brain finally clicked as Apocalypse laced the bitter truth to Fuko by saying, "You dumb twit. Did you really think that by going from quest to quest clearing them out would make the world a better place? No. You were put on this earth to suffer by God, mere playthings to them." And they foreshadow something that will play off during the climax of this pre-time skip era, when they reveal because of Summer's rule over positive temperatures being gone, winter will gain momentum, and if they're not stopped, humanity will die and the planet will be iced over. And if that wasn't pressing enough, Tella comes by and pushes Fuko to make an offer, one that Under can't refuse. I talked about the spoil arc, I talked about the autumn arc, and now I can talk about my third favorite arc, at least of this pre-time skip era, the spring arc. Because Tosaka decided to do a fusion dance and combine character development and the stage presence of the title Uma of this arc into one big great package. Junis radios in everyone, telling them about Under's plan to acquire both Fuko and Apocalypse. She won't hand both over and would rather take the chance of fighting Under and getting to Winter. But Tella interrupts her, saying her plan won't work, and tosses Junis' severe arm to the Union, despite Junis telling everyone to remain calm, which is the last thing you should say to your teammates. Just tell them it's just an arm, 'tis but a flesh wound. But showing the severe arm was what exactly Tella was planning on, as it gave Fuko the final push and negotiate with Tella. She first asked Tella if they're willing to kill Winter right away, but he said no, not even a trade with Apocalypse will be enough. In fact, he said that people dying en masse will be a benefit to them, as it will help them find negators easier. Then Fuko offers if she willingly goes to Under, will they kill Winter right away, shocking everyone including Tella. Junis protests about this plan, worrying about her safety as she's vital for the loop, but Fuko is more concerned about the lives of ordinary people and wants to protect them. Plus, she realizes when Billy betrayed everyone, he copied everyone's abilities who fought him except for hers, Tatiana's, and Shen's. So there has to be a requirement he hasn't met yet for him to copy her ability. And this could be their chance to acquire information about that and more about Under, so she gives her Union badge to Andy and heads off after Tella. Speaking of Andy, he doesn't say anything throughout this moment because despite agreeing with everyone that she doesn't have to go, he trusts her and secretly gives her a gift before telling her goodbye. I love this moment because usually in a story like this, the love interest will usually be the first one to object. It shows how far Andy and Fugo's relationship have come, to the point where even though they haven't confessed their feelings yet, no, I'm not counting the book past Andy from the previous arc, they act like true partners. Besides, it's not like Andy isn't going to be affected, as during this absent period, he runs himself ragged, staying awake and waiting for Fugo to contact him. How does Fugo get into contact with him despite giving him her badge? Well, let's just wait and see. After Burn easily crushes Winter, Tella blindfolds Fugo and leads her to Under's base. Now that she's a part of Under, Billy keeps a close eye on Fugo so that he can finally copy her unluck. while Fuko meets the rest of Under. We know a majority of the members with the exception of 3, but those 3 don't have that much screen time beyond their abilities, which is fine for me. This arc already has a lot of characters to cover and give moments to shine, so having characters on the cutting room floor is going to happen in a story like this. To experiment on Spring's abilities, Under decides to launch a nuke at Spring, but Spring retaliates by using a dice artifact that banks on luck to steal away what the target cherishes the most. As such, Billy tasks Fuko with using her unluck to kill Spring, and Andy, who watched the feed, also figured out Billy's plan, vowing to take Fuko back before that happens. Fuko is given until the 24th of December to evolve her power, who is all for this plan as she feels she's been literally and figuratively carried throughout the story and wants to stand by Andy's side as a negator all on her own. And in order to do that, she has to fall in love with Spring, so she decides to reread her favorite manga series to get a refresher on love. She even asks Latla for love advice since she thinks Rip and her are a thing, but Latla claims they're just good friends.
I'm sorry, I'm allergic to bullshit.
Yeah, I would believe you, Latla, if the past arc didn't show a panel of you reacting to what Rip said about your sister. While alone in Underspace, which is revealed to be inside of Kane, Fuko realizes she truly loves Andy before noticing the gift Andy gave her. And it's Fluffy! I told you he's good to play a major part in an arc. He's here on the request of Andy, and together, they come up with a plan on how to tell Andy about Under's plans. The plan is once Kane surfaces for air, which you learn happens around noon, she'll race towards the roof and escape through the blowhole. The only obstacle in her way are members of Under guarding the halls of each floor, but Fuko's unluck should be enough to at least impair them, despite only knowing 3 of them. The plan starts and she easily gets through the first half as Latla was the one guarding that hallway, and when she gets to the next floor, she comes across a negator who tries to use their ability on her, but it doesn't work as their ability on Chase requires someone who doesn't have deep love for someone or knowing about romance. Fuko finally reaches the top and manages to get a message out to Andy, who receives it and tells Billy he'll take Fuko back on the day of the raid. It doesn't matter how skilled Under is. Thanks to the info Fuko gave, Andy can use it to prepare themselves for the eventual confrontation and settle the score. We get a moment that I was waiting for to happen, and it's a one-on-one conversation between Andy and Junez. The conversation doesn't involve either of their backstories, unfortunately, although Junez does bring up how Andy is similar to Victor when it comes to strategizing, but their souls couldn't be any more different. She thanks Andy for making her realize she needs to trust and have faith in her comrades, after hearing how Andy and Fuko trusted one another and grew, resulting in everyone else in the Union growing alongside them. So she asks Andy to not worry too much about them and believe they can overcome this fight. It's Christmas Eve now! Family members are gathering together, Santa's preparing his 12-hour voyage to deliver presents around the world, and the Union is commencing Operation Neutralize Spring and Rescue Fuko. Both Under and Union are on a time limit because there are 2 ways you can permanently turn into a cherry tree. If you touch the blossom petals that are flowing around the city, or spend 30 minutes within Spring's domain. Billy, along with a handcuffed Fuko, are already at Tokyo Tower, heading towards the top to deal with Spring, while the rest of the members are tasked with stopping the Union. But Junez and Andy were prepared for this as they tasked everyone to lead their target to a designated area and fight them. So the matchups are Chikari and Top versus Creed, Shen, Mew, and Tatiana versus Rip, Latla, and Bunny, and Tella versus Nico. The only fight that gets shown in detail is the one with Chikara and Top, and it does a good job at displaying Chikara and Top's teamwork as Chikara uses our move on Creed, despite being blinded earlier in the fight, while Rip runs 360 around the world and delivers a top speed kick. Top's backstory is also revealed in this fight, but I'm going to hold off on that as I feel a future arc does it better there than here, as its relevance to Top's character, so keep this backstory in mind. We'll come back to it later. Rip and Latla tried to stop Andy, but Andy works with Tatiana to throw him to the top of the tower where Billy and Fuko are at. It's here Andy has a retrospective on his relationship with Fuko. He remarks at first he was fueled by curiosity of a girl who wanted to end herself and was planning on messing with her, but once he saw that meteorite, He thought he stood a chance at dying, hence him coming up with a plan to woo her in order to have enough unluck to die. But as they journeyed together, joining the Union and hearing some earth-shattering info, Andy started to become pessimistic about his plan, believing Fuko can't kill him. Yet, despite that, he continues to be near her and wants to see her again. He could have easily left to find another way to die, but he didn't. As he realizes, he used to be content with just winning her heart, but now, throughout this story, just as Fuko was falling for Andy, he subconsciously was falling for her too, as he pronounced his love to Fuko. Unfortunately, due to a little annoyance that is called a window, Fuko didn't hear his confession, and when she asked him about it as they were scaling to the top of the tower, he denies he said anything important. I would be a lot more annoyed with this if it weren't for the fact Andy tells Fuko about having a heart-to-heart after everything gets settled. Plus, if he did tell her, she would become distracted, and she can't afford to be that as Billy is heading to stop them, and she has to head to the top of the tower. Speaking of Billy, he reveals that he isn't just limited to the Union's Negator's abilities when he uses a completely new Negator ability to try to take on Andy as Fuko continues to climb and reach Spring. As they fight, Andy figures out an aspect of Billy's ability as he can copy up to 6 abilities, and he counteracts those abilities by coming up with new moves, like tearing off his skin and forming a shell out of blood, creating life-size clone scabs. Gross, but cool. Fuko makes it to the top and starts a conversation with Spring. She states while observing them in preparation for the raid, she noticed out of all the 4 Uma seasons, they were the most passive and even looked lonely. Granted, people still got turned into trees, but Spring doesn't attack people directly, so Fuko figured Spring wanted to talk about something. You know, like people. This is an idea I was interested to see if Tosaka would tackle. The idea of Umas having a conscience. This was hinted back in the Billy, Burn, and Juna spoil fight when it's revealed Burn is helping Billy out of their own free will, as it gives them a chance to meet their maker. And Spoil explains to Billy and Junas that they don't have any childhood memories, but the one order that all Umas must follow is to use the rules to make humanity suffer. This brings up some interesting questions. If they follow this one rule, can they pursue any personal interests? Do they feel any guilt anytime their rules affect the people of Earth? And most importantly, can they rebel against their god? Well, all these questions get answered with Spring when they try to downplay Fuko's curiosity by saying they hated humanity because ever since they were brought into existence, they were seen as a bad omen and was chased down like they were some monster humans needed to kill. But Fuko points out, despite the hatred of humanity, they still dress and carry around things made by humans and talk in poetry. Not to mention, she does agree that in the past, Japan did associate cherry blossoms with death, as during the Edo period when Spring first appeared, there were a lot of wars. But nowadays, everyone including her loved cherry blossoms, as she empathizes Spring's past with her own as they're similar, and tells them cherry blossoms now symbolize new encounters and beginnings. And it looks like Spring is being swayed by her words until a pesky guy comes along and brainwashes Spring because they're a sore loser. And for the first time in this manga, I actually felt bad for Uma, as they try to tell Fuko to run away before being overtaken by their brainwashed self, who challenges her to a match of 3 games, with countless lives on the line against the soul Spring had turned into trees. Round 1 is spinning tops. The first one to knock the opposing top wins, and to make sure Fuko doesn't get an easy win, they take Andy as their top. But Fuko has an alternative she wants to use. Ishin with their unbreakable ability. The main reason is because when she found the artifact top, she got flooded with memories of Spring meeting Ishin, so she asked Ishin about their connection with Spring, only to find out that was just an ancestor and the one currently in the armor is a young woman who has a inferiority complex due to her family lineage. But she tries to help Fuko out anyway, and in the game she remains on the defensive against Andy's attacks, until Fuko draws blood for Andy to touch and draw unluck, not realizing that her unluck for Andy isn't going to be minuscule as, yep, you guessed it, a meteorite is heading towards them. But this gives Ishin a chance to build a shield around herself and give Fuko her set of armor, as the meteor crashes into the ring, knocking Andy out. Unfortunately, due to Ishin technically leaving the ring first, Spring wins the first round. Round 2 has negators as cards in a 13-man Karuta game. Yeah, I'm going with this. where each player hears the upper verse read by Billy, and then picks up the corresponding lower verse card. The first one to collect 7 cards wins, and right away Spring takes advantage of Fugo's knowledge of everyone to snatch the card first before Fugo does. It does not look well for Fugo as Spring manages to collect 6 now, but Fugo has been secretly touching Spring this entire time, slowly building up the unluck inside him until it finally explodes in the form of a lightning strike. The brainwashed Spring is confused by this outcome as they state it's impossible for humans to love an Uma, as they hate them and vice versa. But Fugo again points out how in the past Inshi's ancestor manages to befriend and love Spring, so why not her? And she's proven right as in the latter half of the game, she collects enough cards to be even with Spring, who gets struck by lightning every time they get close to Fugo. And when there was one more card to collect, as Billy reads the upper verse, Spring remembers their first friend, Inshin's ancestor and the one they were forced to kill by God's order, causing them to hesitate and Fugo collecting the last card she needs to win. Spring does gain some clarity for a moment, apologizing to Fugo and begging her to kill them, as God is forcing them to activate its third phase. But before being completely consumed, they challenge Fugo to a game of dice, the same artifact dice that was used to stop the nuke at the beginning of this arc. With the threat of being turned into cherry trees, both Under and Union are forced to work together to open the way for Fugo to finish the game. Even Billy, who goes through a change of heart throughout this arc, as initially he perceives Fugo as weak and wanted to steal her ability. Even in the games Fugo played with Spring, he thought she'll run herself into an early grave. But after seeing her risk life and limb, getting to know Spring, making contact with them, and seeing the strokes of unluck hitting an Uma, he finally sees what Juna saw in Fugo as their hope for the future. So he'll help out too. They eventually slice open Spring's body thanks to Billy and Andy working together, and Fugo pulls Spring's core out of the body so that together they can all enjoy cherry blossoms and sake one last time before playing a game of even odds. Fugo of course wins the match thanks to her unluck, and as the Uma fades away, Inshin reveals that she holds no malice to Spring for killing her ancestor, as in her family, there's a tradition to have a certain character in their name, and tells Spring her name is Haruka, or Song of Spring. Realizing that they are loved, Spring lets out one last poetry recital before fading away for good, ending the quest.
Oh my god, are you crying?
No, it's just raining.
But it's not over yet, as Andy has that heart-to-heart with Fugo he promised. The fight with Spring helped bring some things into perspective for Andy, as her unluck managed to kill even an Uma, and realized he's been going about this relationship wrong as it was one-sided. So he tells her it's his turn to fall in love with her. In order to do that, plans on taking her around the world so they can fall deeper in love. And this is the part of this story where after this beautiful moment, I nearly lost my shit when this happened, as it came out of nowhere. So I'm just going to give you guys a few seconds to mentally prepare yourselves for what I'm about to show you. Ready? 3, 2, 1, Fugo's dead.
What? What the fuck?
Okay, she's not really dead. I think everyone and their mother knows that usually the main character doesn't die, just put in critical condition. So you might be wondering, who the hell is this? Well, this is a negator that doesn't have any build-up, no mention by any of the characters, has an ability called Unruin, and just dips out after regenerating when Andy tried to kill him. The first time when I read this manga, I was generally wondering where the story was going. Granted, I currently know why certain decisions were made, but it doesn't get any more annoying while rereading this part. With Fugo slowly dying and any other option being impossible with her condition, Billy allows Junes, Andy, and Fugo into Under's base in order for Junes to use the round table. She makes a deal with an entity known as Luna by transferring all of her points to the latter two in exchange for them to skip a week of time so that the new rule Ghost can be added. The entity agrees, and with the new rule added, Fugo's death causes her soul to come out of her body. But before everyone, including me, has a chance to breathe, Ghost snatches Fugo up and is lured in by a massive slaughter caused by Ruin, who wanted Ghost to eat Fugo already. But Ghost is intrigued by Fugo's Comperial form and wants to save her for later before both them and Ruin disappear. So Fugo is safe, for now, and Andy just needs to get her back before her soul weakens and gets eaten. And if things couldn't get any worse, suddenly the Earth starts slowly moving their way towards the sun, causing revolution to be added. But how? Didn't everyone complete all the 4-season quests? Well, the setup from Apocalypse paid off when they tell the Union with the 3 of the seasons dead, the planet is thrown out of balance as something similar to revolution is set to occur. And just because I'm a curious little wolf, I googled what would happen if we had no more seasons, and from what most websites and articles told me, we would all be screwed. So the outcome of the Union taking the quest or not would be the same either way, and Apocalypse arrogantly boasts they only have 3 months left to live before the Earth crashes into the sun, as the final quest has officially begun, Ragnarok. This is it, the climax of the pre-time skip era. I'm not going to waste any more time with the introduction, so let's get to it. Andy decides to leave the Union to get Fuko back alone, seeing Ruin will attack anyone else, just like he did with Fuko, while the Union and Under work together to keep the world stable. Although it's mostly just Billy telling Creed, everyone else went on their separate ways. Like Unburned, Unchast, and Undrawn returned to Japan. Bang is still alive, unsurprisingly, in the Union's prison working on becoming stronger. Latla and Buddy are helping search for Fuko, which is nice. And Rip is doing his own thing, but he does appear later on, and yeah, I'm dreading for when I have to go over that part of this arc. Andy's search for Fuko brings him to a small village where he protected a young girl named Lucy, who told him about a strange occurrence that's happening where everyone is turning into smiling vampiric zombies, 3 words I never thought I would put into a sentence, and heading into a castle further in the forest. Realizing that this is where Rune has been, he takes off to the forest with Lucy tagging along because she wants to rescue her mom. There, multiple Umas are gathered like it's a party, and Andy quickly kills them one by one. So much so that God had finally had enough of this shit and sent an Uma named Seal to deal with him. Seal's ability to use multiple Umas at once by sealing them overpowers Andy, but when Lucy gets in the way trying to help him, Seal absorbs her as well, only to catch a cold. Realizing a weakness, Andy then willingly jumps into Seal. Confused but unfazed by what just happened, Seal makes their way to the castle where Ruin is there. Here we kind of get Ruin's motivation, and it's to be a regulator, someone chosen by God to regulate the rules of the world and usher in God, but because an organization like the Union threatens that regulation, he aims to kill every member. And that's about it. We don't get his backstory on how he got this way, although we do get a reason why he's so hell-bent on following this god, as he claims he doesn't have any parents despite being a negator, and the one who gave birth to him was God themselves. Meanwhile, inside Seal, Andy asks Lucy how she made Seal catch a cold, and it's revealed Lucy is a negator too, with her ability being unhealthy. Funny enough, the way she did it was through astral projection by imagining she was Peter Pan, her favorite character, as it was her wish to go outside and play with the other kids. With Lucy's help, Andy and the other Umas who were trapped break out of Seal using astral projection. However, Seal easily reins back the Umas and pins Andy down to the ground. When Andy demands to know where Fuko and Ghost are, Rune reveals they aren't with him, but instead at the Union base, making friends with someone. He prepares to attack Lucy, but she gets saved by Rip, who frees Andy and Lucy Seals from Seal, and joins up with Andy to prepare to fight against Rune and Seal. But before the pair start to fight one another, the world begins to shake and Mew rails in Andy that the Union has been betrayed. Again! At least this time you can see it coming, as the friend Ghost met up with was Nico, who saw the ghost of someone he knew, and well, you can fill in the blanks after that. So whatever deal Nico made with Ghost required him to kill all the Umas holding back Ragnarok, causing the world to fall into more chaos. Taking that as their cue to leave, Ruin and Seal left to go to the Union base and usher in God. When Andy tries to run after them, Rip stops him, as he was the one Rip was originally after, and we get the full story on Rip's past. He was once a rich kid who played with Latla and Layla, who was sick and would die in 10 years due to a heart disease. Rip promised to save her, devoting his life to becoming a skilled enough doctor, while Latla would become a natural famous fortune teller to save her sister spiritually. Rip even promised Layla after the successful surgery he'll marry her. But like when it was shown in the Autumn arc, Even with the preparations, the surgery doesn't go as planned, and Layla dies, leaving Rip in a pit of despair who tried to game end himself. But Latla stopped him, explaining the scar on his face and why it's always bleeding. She tells Rip what they are now, and there could be a way to bring her back, the Ark, which leads to the current present, as Rip figured out the round table is the Ark, and knows about the point system. Since Andy has the largest amount of points, Rip is fighting Andy to take the points needed to ride the Ark and save Layla. The fate of the world doesn't matter to Rip, as a world without her is torture for him. And even if he does save Layla and the world ends, he still doesn't care, as he can cherish the short time he has with her and die together. But Rip also has someone he's willing to fight for too, and won't go down easily, leading into a bloody battle between the two, with Andy almost defeating Rip if it wasn't for Latla saving him at the last second. She rightfully slaps and berates him for always doing things by himself, and begs him for once in his life, let her risk her life to help him save her sister. So she comes up with a plan, but it costs her her own life, as she grabs onto Andy and using her negator powers has Rip strike Andy so that it doesn't miss, fatally wounding her as well. In Andy's subconscious, Victor speaks to Andy asking, "What are you doing? Are you just gonna let them win?" And Andy responds by saying because of his love for Fuko, he's left with two difficult options. He can kill Rip, stop Ragnarok, and save Fuko, but that would cause Fuko, who is known to make friends regardless if they're friend or foe, to be sad. Or let Rip go save Layla, but at the cost of the next Ragnarok ring around the corner, dooming everyone. However, Victor tells him a third option, to have Fuko board the Ark. Because, let's face it, this loop is doomed anyway, even if they somehow stop Ragnarok. But if Fuko boards the Ark, she'll be safe to go to the next loop, and Andy will be fine because he can't die. And together, they can prevent all of the negator tragedies that have occurred in the current loop, and rebuild the Union. Andy ultimately agrees to this plan, and Victor lends Andy his power, resulting in As Rip lays defeated and dying, Latla tells Andy the date of the two's awakening and Layla's death, begging him to save her. After agreeing, he then leaves Rip, Latla, and Lucy to rush back to the Union's base, with Rip, despite previously claiming he doesn't believe Andy can change their fates, asking to be part of the Union next time. And so, both Latla and Rip spend their last moments with one another, with Latla embracing Rip one more time before she passes. And I'm sorry to say this, but the downer mood doesn't stop here, as I have to go over Nico's backstory, so all aboard the angst train! And I know I said that Akira's backstory was the most cruel, but Nico is a pretty close second. His past reveals he was one of the first few scientists to be brought onto the Union, and was the one who hated it every time God adds a new rule to the world, often calling it a game of cat and mouse. But in this flashback, we see where Nico meets his future wife, Ichigo. They have the usual rivals to lovers story beats, but it's when after they got married and Ichigo is about to have their daughter Nico that things took a dark turn, as this is where his negator ability manifests, and it's called Unforgettable, which allows Nico to never forget any memories. However, it couldn't have come at a worst possible time when Ichigo is left dying after giving birth to Nico, meaning all of the good memories Nico had with Ichigo before Unforgettable are forgotten, with this moment here the only memory he has of her. I'm sorry if it's starting to get a little long-winded, but I had to establish some context as to why this is important to Nico, hence the betrayal. Because Nico made a deal with Ghost that if he helps Ruin and hands over Andy's soul, he'll get Ichigo's soul. And after luring Andy to his lab, the two fight for who will save their lover's soul. Nico then merges with Ghost to empower his invention, the Astral Dolls, but Andy defeats Nico by destroying his lab, which contains the last remnants of his wife before his awakening, and at the same time breaking Nico's will. This allows Ghost to take possession of Nico and achieve Phase 2. When Andy tries to use astral projection to beat them, they have Fugo against their core as a shield to protect themselves. But this act pissed Nico off and wrestled back control of his body to move Fugo's soul out of the way, telling Andy to kill both of them and that Fugo's soul will be okay, as Even if a Uma dies, there's a lag before the rule is erased. And so Andy cuts through Ghost Nico, grabs Fugo's soul, and with the help of Miko, successfully revives her while Nico has one last talk with Ichigo before he passes on. Fugo, who saw everything that happened while Andy was trying to save her, breaks down crying, having doubts if she's really the right person to be selected to loop. But Tatiana comes crashing in during her fight with Ruin to tell her, as someone who fought by her side, she has enough faith that Fugo can do it before going back to the fight. She tells the duo to head to where Junas is while she and Phil will handle Seal and Ruin, who is pretty pissed that Fugo came back to life. But the duo doesn't want to lose any more people and begs Tatiana to let them fight alongside her. Seal leaves to go cause trouble somewhere and Phil races after them while Tatiana and the duo fight, but Ruin quickly turns the tables on them by trapping Tatiana in a spear of blood and was ready to kill her if Billy didn't come and save her. As he and Ruin fight, he loses his arm, which doesn't regenerate, and tells the duo and Tatiana he lost Unmove, Unstoppable, and Undead, although he has a way to gain some of those abilities back. By using his Union emblem and contacting Top and Chikara, he allowed Ruin to kill Fugo and he killed Tatiana respectively, even though both of those statements are false. But him lying is required in order for his ability to be activated, as he finally reveals what his ability is and his true reason for his betrayal. And it's been something he's been saying for the past several arcs, which is unfair. No, I'm serious, his ability is called Unfair, which allows him to replicate other negators' abilities so as long as they see him as a threat, which is a little broken if you ask me. And his motivations to betray the Union was hinted at in the previous arc during his fight with Andy, and he claims some negators aren't as strong-willed as Andy, and all they need to do is live and have their abilities be used by him, as he can be strong enough for them. So his plan was to play the part of a traitor's villain and copy everyone's abilities to fight God, seeing the young members like Chikara, Top, Fugo, and Tatiana, who he saw as a daughter figure, as too young, believing they deserve better. Really, his plan reminds me of... Okay, I'm about to spoil the Penacony quest of Honkai Star Rail and the endgame of Persona 5 Royal, so if anyone is interested in both games but doesn't know what happens in them, skip to this time code. As I was saying, his plan reminds me of Sunday's and Maruki's plans, where Sunday wants to create an everlasting dream for those who don't want to face reality or their problems, and Maruki wanted to erase all trauma and suffering from people and create a paradise where the concept of pain doesn't exist. Really, all three followed the example of good intentions but have a wrong way of going about it. So I was right about Billy betraying everyone, but not really, and his explanation also clarifies as to why he couldn't copy Fugo's, Tatiana's, or Shen's abilities, as the two former didn't believe he was truly a bad person, and the latter probably has suspicions about Billy's motives. He does manage to steal Ruin's ability by mocking how his ability is just a weaker version of Undead, calling him an imperfect reject, which pisses Ruin off even more. He tells the duo that he and Tatiana will hold off Ruin while they head to the round table, and even though Fugo is reluctant to go, she and Tatiana make a pinky promise that in the next loop, they'll find each other and become friends again. The duo finally make it to the round table where Junas is waiting for them and delivers some major reveals. To Fugo, she tells her the mechanics behind the looping and how every time a loop is initiated, its destination moves further forward in time. So when Fugo takes the next loop, it'll be in the 1800s with a flashback showing Juna's first time looping to the prehistoric era, and she was pretty young during this. It makes you wonder how long she's been doing this, but Victor answers this in an upcoming flashback that Junas has been looping for 455.4 billion years. Jeez, no wonder both Junas and Victor started to have doubts about this plan. I can't even imagine. So to see her resolve, Junas asks Fugo what her vision of justice is and how she wishes to shape the next world. Fugo answers her to have a world free of God, where she and everyone else can be allowed to live in peace, but remarks she wants to do that now instead of waiting for the next loop. However, Junas tells her there is a way for everyone to remember regardless of the loops, and it's something Andy has been unintentionally carrying this whole time. You know that card Andy has lodged in his head? That's no ordinary card. That's an artifact. It's called Remember, and it has two functions: to restore or seal memories, and Junas explains earlier in the current loop, she and Victor were trying to find it in order to gather Union members. At least, that's what she thought, as Victor enacts his plan to kill her so she can live out the last few loops free of the burden. And this moment where I made the theory of Junas creating Andy comes true, as unfortunately, Junas uses his motives to her advantage when she activates Injustice on Victor and uses Remember to reset Victor's memories, creating Andy, as it was likely a phenomenon created by Undead's regeneration. This causes Andy to draw his sword on Junas, venting out that his grief, his loss of close friends, his frustrations of not being able to die, his loneliness and guilt, and his jadedness all happened because of her. Yet, at the same time, it's because of her he was able to meet Fuko and accept who he is. So he thanks both her and Victor for creating him. Alright, we're almost at the end of this arc and everyone starts to prepare for the looping process. Junas has a small heart-to-heart with Apocalypse, who pretends they don't care about her, and explains to Fuko even with all the quests she's cleared, she still doesn't have enough to initiate the loop. However, Victor temporarily takes control, and asks Luna to transfer all of his points to Fuko, making Fuko qualified to sit in the first seat. All things considered, this is something Fuko was hoping for when she first joined the Union, although she wishes the circumstances to attain it were different. Apocalypse then explains that due to 11 seats being added to the arc, Fuko must wait 11 minutes before looping, and those 11 minutes are going to be the most tensest 11 minutes of her life, as she will have to sit there and watch everyone fight off Ragnarok, or else the timer would reset. Junas and Andy take off to partake in the upcoming fight against Guy and the Regulators, but not before Andy gives Fuko one last hug to fuel up on Unluck, and tells her he's not saying goodbye, but rather it's a see you later. Now alone, Luna appears before Fuko and has a chat with her while we see for the very first time who this god is, as it's revealed they're the very sun itself. Luna also reveals some things when they explain they're a god as well, and anyone who has knowledge of mythological gods knows what I'm about to say next. So to simplify things, the whole nature of loops and the Battle of Umas is a game between Luna and Sun on whether or not humanity could reach the gods, with Luna supporting humanity in creating artifacts, while the Sun supports the rules and create the Umas. But just because Luna is on humanity's side doesn't mean their attitude has any moral high ground, as they act like a passive, condescending parent, while the Union, including the remaining members of Under, give their fucking all to fight Sun. Even Victor comes out to help, as this is his last chance to fight alongside Junas, and wants to be there in her final moments. Unsurprisingly, Sun overpowers them at the end and destroys the Earth in the process. But I have to admit, dying while battling the Sun is sure one hell of a way to go. Ultimately, with everyone's help, Fuko loops, thanking everyone before she leaves and watching the destruction of Earth in despair. And before she is transported back to the newly formed Earth, with a scornful look towards Luna and determination in her heart, she tells Luna in the next loop, she'll take everyone's sacrifice and work on gathering everyone together to negate the gods. And that is the end of the pre-time skip era. I'm glad I decided to cover this series because rereading these chapters remind me why I love this manga. From the very start, it introduces characters I grew to love, and I love how it was unapologetic itself, that it kept me guessing on how the story was going to be. Like originally I thought it was going to be a road trip between Andy and Fuko, learning more about each other and Fuko's unluck. Then it quickly turns into joining the organization that was originally hunting them down and clearing out quests like it's a video game, and then it escalates into being involved in a secret war between the Gators and gods, and yeah, you get the picture. There were even some story elements that I picked up on a second reading that gets further explored in the current events of the manga. Is it a perfect series? No, I think when I express my annoyances with certain parts should be enough to tell you. But for what it is, I'm happy to call it an overall great enjoyment. Unfortunately, I'm going to take a short break from this series, as I'm being honest, I'm a little burnt out covering this series. But don't worry, I'll be back sooner than you think, as we're only just getting started on this journey. Let me know what you think about the manga in the comments below, and thanks to everyone who tuned in to watch this. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click on the bell to be notified for more of my manga related content. I hope you have a decent day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Take a deep breath,